I want to start off with a tiny thing. Let me get the attribution for it. I was listening to a Conversations with Tyler, which is fun. And one of the people he interviewed had something interesting to say about the values in a company. It's this Brian Armstrong guy. So what I'm going to experiment with, I'm going to try to do a short video here in the stream, and then I can cut that up to be the little social dealy, because you only get 2 minutes and 20 seconds in Twitter, 10 minutes in LinkedIn, an infinite amount of time in Facebook and Instagram, but whatever. I'll do the short thing and then just go over long form stuff. I'm always down on vision and corporate values and things like that. They don't really seem too practical and useful. My advice is always to think about a vision statement as a tool that you have. The one I always cite is from DBS Bank in Singapore.
We are the bank who wants you to live more, bank less.
So you use that as a guiding vision for making people's interaction with your banking software as quick and efficient as possible. That's always what you're driving towards. But I listened to an interview with this guy, Brian Armstrong, the other day on Conversations with Tyler. And Tyler asked him, aren't values and vision statements not useful? And he came up with some other stuff, I'm sure, but I remember this part. He essentially said when you're hiring and even retaining people, they can be a good filter for the type of person that you want. It might be overwrought to say that we embody these things, but we aspire to be this way. We aspire to be collaborative and kind. The old pivotal motto was be kind and do the right thing. That does give you a filtering. At least it filters out the people who are like, that seems like a bunch of like soft hippie stuff. And it also points towards the way that you'll be operating today. That's what I would say to try to do with your value statements and your moral compasses and principles and things like that, is I would almost reverse engineer them from the way that you currently operate and think a little bit about how you would aspire to operate. And think about how you would put that into a moralistic principle set, right? Don't start with principles of this is what's good and this is how we think about ourselves. Instead, look at how you operate and think about how you would describe the way you operate, because chances are it's going to take a long time to change over to some sort of shining city on the hill. Now, obviously, if you're being evil or annoying or a jerk or things worse, don't just codify that in your morals. Codify good things. There you go. That was my little short thing. I've been working on my book, the mindset book. See, check this out. I've printed out my outline. Now, what I've noticed is as I write this, it's actually all those little 2-minute videos I do are good for get a transcript of that, and you can go in and polish it up. So my idea, if you remember, I laid this out in the fall. It actually works. You can talk about things and go over them. But let's look at what is a section that I wrote that I thought was something kind of newish. That's a good. Here's a slight thing that I picked up in this. I wouldn't say this book, but as you can see, let me increase the size here. Let's go up to 200%. Yeah. Get Abstract. It's actually a fantastic service. If you find yourself reading a lot of airport books, and especially for my purposes here, where I want to draw on the literature of airport business books to find the good stuff. I got a Harvard Business Review subscription, which is hit or miss. But Get Abstract is good because you can just, basically they write summaries of books. You can just plow through business books and get those core ideas that you would distill in your writing anyways. And let's be honest, including my books, most business books could just be like a 2-page blog post. A lot of the time spent in business books is spent persuading you that they have a good idea. Also, as I do here, putting the mindset in your mind. If you need that kind of stuff as a tool, it's great. But after a while, you read enough airport books and you're like, I understand all the background. What I really need is I want to go through all the combinations of the facts that I have and the understanding of things, and really just have you posit that this way of thinking, this new thing is useful. Speaking of which, I listened to a good summary. I guess this book, Trust Factor. Anyhow, the way people come up with titles is silly. If you look at the title that I have have just conceded the point to the editors. I just wanted to call it Mindset. Changing mindsets would be good. But this is a title that my editors came up with, and that's fine. The missing ingredient, I like that ingredient. Makes it taste good. To modernizing software. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty descriptive. I'll go with that. Anyway, so if you look at the metrics here, as I was going over in my little short social quick hit thing, I like thought technologies to be a tool, to be something you can use. And thinking about metrics, right? So metrics, things that you measure, your KPIs, your OKRs, your whatnot TLAs, like a lot of the times they are to check in on the ongoing status of something. Management wants to know if you're progressing to plan. They want to know what the sales are, what the profit are, like what's your productivity. There's all these things that basically are, I don't know, they're gauges to tell you, are things going well? Do I need to intervene, or do I just let the factory keep running? Not whatever. A lot of them are that way. There's a whole conversation you could have about, there's a good blog post I'll have to go over one day about observability is about taking signals and figuring out what those signals mean. And then in addition to that, helping track down what changed to cause the problem, which I think is it's an interesting like position to noodle over, written by the CEO of a company that provides you that. Now I know about bias at a vendor. You should never let the idea that a vendor is biased make you think that what they're saying is false. That's a bad Annie pattern to fall into. It would basically mean that anyone had something to sell could instantly ruin any idea. That would be fun. A fun subversive thing to do is that if you wanted to ruin an idea for the certain type of audience, you would instantly try to commercialize on it, and they would be like the punk rock effect. They would instantly think it was bad because people were making money off of it. Anyhow, so one of the points in here, I read the abstract of it, so I don't know if it actually discusses it. I should probably get the book and read it. But it makes the point that you can use metrics to instill trust with your staff. So when you're changing over your culture, right? Remember, my thing is always like what we're looking to do. We want to run the business based on our ability to use software to sense and learn and innovate and change the business, and also just be the primary storefront, the primary way we interact with our customers, our supply chain, whoever the people are in our business. Software is the primary channel for that. Storefront's a better metaphor, or more common, whatever. So you're changing the culture over to be more of a product mindset, not just deliver a project of software. But a lot of what you're trying to do is you have to shift over to that culture, because most people run in a project way. They don't run in this product-oriented way. So you have to win their trust over to doing that. And this is like one of those very lengthy telling of a joke that gets to a very small punchline. But I like this idea that the author set forth. What you should do is when you're trying to win over trust, you should establish metrics and transparency around them that more or less are only a basis for winning over trust. So you can say, we are going to show you, trust us, that if we shift over to doing shorter amounts of work more frequently, to delivering software weekly, and if we also shift over to, I'm giving you the responsibility as the product team to figure out what features to work on week to week. Let's establish some metrics that show that we have less bugs in the system, that it actually is better for us to ship smaller bits more frequently. And then also let's establish some metrics that we as an organization, I as management, value the outcome of your decisions. I validate that you've made good decisions over the last 3 months because you have taken ownership of this, right? I think a lot of people will be afraid of taking ownership of something so quickly. They would rather have management be in charge of telling the developers what to do, because then if they do the wrong thing, if it's not valuable, it's not their fault. They just did what they were told. And that's the mentality you have when you've been operating in a project way. So I think you need to figure out how to demonstrate to the team that you actually do want them to take responsibility, and you will value the decisions that they make and not blame them for it when a bad thing is done. Eventually, you do want to blame them for it. We like to be all like kind and good in our DevOps world and give hugs and stuff. But it's important to remember the effect of shame and negative effects, right? Like my kids we were late to school today by about 15 minutes. And my daughter was saying like, oh, we're late to school. And I was telling her like, it's good to be late. It's good to have a negative outcome sometimes because it reminds you, it makes you think you need to change something. So we need to leave earlier. So shame can be a fine motivator, right? You don't want to use shame in this kind of very Western sense that we use shame, which is to really condemn and punish people. If someone does something bad, or you believe they are bad, you shame them, and it levels out this credit debt mercantile moral system that we have, where you're always trying to balance the books of bad behavior and good behavior. So you punish people to balance those books there. Sorry to get all whatever there all of a sudden. I think people who are working under a project mentality, they're not really used to taking on that responsibility and they don't trust it. So you can use metrics, you can demonstrate to them, you can prove to them by showing that the features they put out were good, and also that they were somehow rewarded. I don't quite know how you would do that metric, but you can show them everything was cool. Now, I think another thing is totally synthesoided out from left field is, I don't know any of the vocabulary, but I was reading a summary of 2 papers explaining or theorizing what the psychology of depression. And the 2 papers, at least the summary, was suggesting that one of the problems chronically depressed people have is, for whatever reason, they don't trust their sensory input. And by sensory input, they meant stuff in front of them, right? Like things that people are saying immediately, the kind of input, the feedback they're getting from the world. If you think about a person as a system that's always interacting with the world, you get feedback to tell you how it's going, what works and doesn't work. But also sensory in the sense of replaying past interactions that they had. So thinking about how things worked out. And for whatever reason, they don't trust this feedback. They don't trust the sensory input. And it allows that kind of latent default sense that everything is going to go wrong just out of the gate to stay there, despite what the proof is, what the feedback is. And it's this mismatch in trusting sensory input that makes them assume that everything's going to be bad, leads to a depressive state, leads to resentment, leads to anger, all this bad stuff. Maybe not literally, but metaphorically, that's another instance of the mindset that you have to, this is good stuff. I need to put this in the book. That leads to an issue that you have, which is you've got to fix that sensory input, that feedback engine that people have learned over time, especially in a bad system, a bad culture, a bureaucratic or what do they call it, a pathological system. You've got to kind of recondition them to trust their feedback, right? So that when they see the feedback that their software is good, they understand that they're doing a good job and they should continue to do the thing. And so I think metrics are another thing you can use with that. So it'd be great if I had an example of that. I can only speak from experience that as a developer, when I would get input that things were going well, I do more and more of it. But I do have to trust that input. Streaming here is a good example. I don't know if I would use it in a book. I always hate it when you're trying to make a point like I was just doing in one domain and then you use an example from a completely different domain. But here I go. I was doing streaming for a while and you upload it to YouTube, you get very little interaction or feedback from that system. But then when I started posting things to Twitter and LinkedIn, you get a high amount of interaction, right? The amount of, they call it engagement. The amount of engagement you get in those 2 things is times infinity, right? It's near zero that you get from just uploading to YouTube and doing a stream here. But in those 2 things, you get a ton of it, which is gratifying. So I trust that sensory input. Now, I'm always wondering, is that just junk and engagement, right? It's not quality. But these distinctions are not really important in this instance. You get more feedback there and you got to trust that sensory input. Anyhow, that's it for today. I think I'm going to start these, as I was saying, at 10:30, just in case something happens. And that way I'm not a little late. I can bike the kids to school, get back here with enough time to catch my breath, make a smoothie. And as always, go to tanzu.tv. You can find all the Tanzu Talk things down there. And if you want to find links for getting free books, booking office hours with us, checking out what we have to offer in the Kubernetes world and the software development world with our frameworks and things like Spring, we've got a build service. Basically, if you are writing and running software now, since the past year or so, over in VMware Tanzu Land, we have pretty much everything for you except an IDE. We have the whole stack there if you want to check that out. You can also go to tanzutalk.com where I list some common links, things like that. So with that, we'll see everyone on this coming Thursday. Bye-bye.